Hi, my name is Sarah and my channel is Naughty Gnome Crafts. It's vlogtober, so I am bringing you a new video every day in the month of October, and today's video is going to be all about my tips and tricks for printing and assembling PDF patterns at home. Before we get started, I will share that I am wearing my Helen's Closet Blackwood cardigan out of a Ponte knit that I got from fabric.com, and I'm also wearing my Pattern Emporium Keep It Simple Babe tee that I made out of a floral cotton spandex jersey that I got from Style Maker, and both of those patterns will be linked in the description box. So today's video is a long time coming. I have wanted to film a video like this for many months, but I just haven't gotten around to it. And Vlogtober has kind of kicked me into gear to kind of film some of these videos that I've been thinking about and I just haven't done yet. So I know that a lot of people really hate printing PDF patterns and assembling them at home. And I'm one of those weirdos who actually kind of likes it. I enjoy putting the patterns together, and it's like a little puzzle putting them together. I actually already own a lot of the equipment that would facilitate printing patterns at home. And so in case you are interested in printing your own patterns, or maybe you aren't interested but you have a pattern that only comes as a printed home option, I'm going to share with you some of the little tips and tricks that I have learned over the years to make the process as quick and painless as possible. So the first part of this video, we're going to talk about tools that I think really facilitate assembling patterns at home. Now, obviously, you don't need to buy any of these tools. I'm not telling you to go out and get these things, but if you do a lot of printing patterns at home, I do think that these things make it easier. They make the process go more smoothly. And so these are going to be my recommendations for the kind of tools that you should use if you do print your own patterns on a regular basis. I will be linking all of these tools down in the description box, and they will be Amazon links, and I am an Amazon affiliate, which means that if you make a purchase through clicking the links, I get a small commission, just to be totally upfront about that. Okay, so let's just get started. So first up on my tools list is a laser printer. Now, I am not saying go out and buy a laser printer. I actually had already purchased a black and white laser printer last year for a different purpose. But now I primarily use it to print my own patterns at home. And so if you do happen to already have a laser printer at home, it is a useful thing to use for printing PDF patterns. I would actually not recommend using an inkjet because the ink in inkjet printers can get very expensive. But the printer that I purchased last year, it's an HP printer. I'll try to link the one that I bought, but it's likely that there's like a newer version or something. So I'll just try to link a printer that's the closest to the one that I actually have. I want to say that it cost me like $150. So not a huge investment. Obviously, it's not nothing, but like if you do a lot of printing, if you plan to do this over many years, it might be worth it. Or again, really, if you already have one at home, it's a good tool to use for that purpose. And the toner that I buy I think it's usually around $50. And I want to say that the toner lasts me for like a year and a half. So, again, I'm not saying to go out and buy this, but like if you already happen to have this tool, it is a useful thing to use for printing your patterns at home. Okay, next up on my tools list is copy paper. So I know that people's paper preferences are very different. My preference is to use regular, normal copy printer. I think it's like 28 pound, like the normal stuff that you would buy. I know that you can buy heavier paper, you can buy thinner paper. I don't like the heavier stuff because I sometimes use pins when I pin my patterns to my fabric. Sometimes I use pattern weights, but sometimes I use pins. And if you use pins, it's harder to get the pins through a thicker paper, so that's why I don't like thick paper. And also, whether you buy thicker paper or thinner paper, it's going to be more expensive than just the regular copy paper. I buy the Amazon Basics paper. I just buy one ream at a time. I do it on my subscribe and save, and I usually have to replace it like once every 4 months or something. So it's not a huge investment. Again, I will link the paper that I use down in the description box. So yeah, that's a no-brainer. You need some paper. Next up in the tools list is a paper trimmer. So I will show you the trimmer that I have. This is a Fiskars paper trimmer, And this little arm does come out to kind of facilitate lining things up. It has a blade here. I gotta keep my finger on it because it will fall out. And I think the one that I bought did come with a replacement blade. I've never actually replaced the blade before. So this one, I will link it on Amazon if I can find it, but I actually bought this from Joann. And just a little tip, if you wanna buy one of these trimmers, I highly recommend going to Joann or Michael's and using a coupon when they have a 50% off coupon sale. I think that's actually the cheapest way to obtain one of these paper trimmers, and that's what I did when I bought mine. There are other types of paper trimmers. You can get the guillotine kind with a little lever, but I just use that one. I only trim one page at a time, although I think you can do as many as 3, but just for accuracy's sake, I only do 1 page at a time. But having a paper trimmer does make it much faster if you need to trim your PDFs rather than doing it with scissors, which is what I used to do. So yeah, having a paper trimmer is just a really nice thing to have. Okay, next up on the tools list is a twofer. So you need some tape and you need, well, you don't need it, but I would recommend getting a tape dispenser. So this tape dispenser is just very basic. I wanna say it was like $2 on Amazon. It was super, super cheap. You can get ones that are cuter or more like ergonomic or something, but like I just got the cheapest one because I don't really care. So I got the tape dispenser, and then I also buy these Scotch brand refills, and I buy them in bulk. I'll try to link the ones that I get on Amazon. Generally I buy as many of these as I can at once. So you can't get around it. The tape is a little bit pricey for what it is. I always buy the Scotch brand tape because I have tried in the past to buy cheaper tape, and what happens is that the tape will tear and you'll like on a diagonal, and then you'll waste a bunch of tape when it's cheaper tape. And so it's worth it to buy the name brand, in my opinion, even though it is more expensive. So it's always one of those things where every time I have to buy more tape, I'm always like, man, tape costs this much. Like, it kind of annoys me, but it is a necessity. I know that some people use glue for their PDFs, but I very much prefer to use tape. And I do like the kind that is like frosted. It's not the like shiny, transparent kind, clear kind. It's the kind that's a little bit frosted and more matte. So again, I'll link the exact tape that I use in the description box below. But yeah, you're gonna need some tape. Next on the tools list is another thing that I just think is really nice to have. It's not necessary. You don't need to go out and buy the full set. I actually happen to already have it for other reasons, but it is Mildliners. So if you are not familiar with Mildliners, they're like highlighters, but they're less harsh colors. They're not neon, so they're a little bit gentler on the eye. And the thing that makes it especially useful for me when using PDFs is it has a double-ended tip. So you've got like your normal chisel tip that's like a normal highlighter, but then you also have this bullet tip. And I like using this bullet tip when I'm marking my size on the PDFs, because this fine line makes it really easy to just mark your size when the lines are squeezed really close together. And I will be showing you an example of this later on so you can see more clearly what I'm talking about. But yeah, again, like I'm not saying you need to go out and buy a full set of these. I think that it is kind of expensive. I want to say that I paid like $35 or something for the whole set of 25, but you can also buy them in 5-packs. So you could just pick your favorite colors and buy a 5-pack for like 10 bucks or something. And these last for a really long time. So I do like using Mildliners for highlighting my size on PDFs, and also if I were doing tracing for like Berta magazine or something, I use these for that as well. So the final tool that I have to talk to you about today is a rotary cutter. And yes, a rotary cutter for paper. I have this 28mm Olfa rotary cutter, and I already had this for quilting, but I actually have repurposed it for cutting out my paper PDF patterns. What I like about this is that it's small, and so you can go around those tight curves pretty well. And I only use this blade. I keep it for my paper patterns. I don't use it on fabric. And I just use it instead of scissors to cut around my pieces once I've taped them all together. I just find it quicker and easier, and it's a little bit easier on my hands because I do have some issues with my hands sometimes and when I try to use scissors, my hands get tired very quickly. So this just helps cut out my paper patterns very quickly and easily without being hard on my hands. All right, now that we've talked about some tools, let's go into the tips. Tip number 1 is to use the layers function in the PDF if it is available to you. So I did film a clip months ago of a little screenshot of me showing how to use the layers function in Adobe Acrobat if you are not familiar with it. So I'm going to go ahead and insert that clip here. Here I have the Friday Pattern Company square neck top, and I want to print it out. So just opening up the PDF in Adobe Reader, you see like all the pages over here, and you're going to want to click this panel, which is the layers panel, and this shows all of the sizes. So I'm going to unselect all of the sizes except for my own, and if you want to grade between sizes, you can obviously just choose the sizes that you're going to grade between, and then when you print it, there's a lot less going on here for you to have to work around. You know which size is yours. So the only other thing that I want to point out is that when you do eliminate sizes, especially if you're towards the smaller end, make sure that you go through each page and that every page has printing on it, because sometimes, because of the different sizes, there could be blank pages. Like this one's completely blank. So make sure when you look at the map of your PDF that this page isn't like, if it's a giant skirt or something, that this blank page actually does need to be inside the skirt. Like make sure it's not one of those. But if the page is totally blank, then you can just eliminate it and don't print that page because you don't need it. And then you're not wasting paper. All right, my tip number 2 is to highlight your size. I printed out a little example here. I'm not actually making this pattern right now, but I just printed it out because it was a good example of a pattern that does not have layers. So if you don't have layers and you're not able to just print your size, I highly recommend using a highlighter, or I use Mildliners to go ahead and draw around my size so that I can very clearly see it. And that's where the bullet tip of the Mildliners really comes in handy, because when these lines are like so close together and it's really hard to distinguish which one is your size, that little bullet tip, you can get a pretty fine line so that you are only highlighting your size and not anything else. So that's why I like to use the Mildliners over a more typical chisel tip highlighter. Tip number 3 might seem a little bit silly and obvious, but you never know, like sometimes people just don't think of these things. If you print out pages for other things, or if you happen to print a PDF and you end up with some pages that you actually don't need to use, go ahead and keep them and just put them back in your printer and then print on the other side. So I had my little sample here of my pattern, and I actually am just reusing some paper that I had already printed on the other side. It's just a way to not waste paper, and we all like to be frugal and not wasteful if we can. So if you have an opportunity to use some discarded paper, just go ahead and print on the other side. Tip number 4 is probably the most important tip that I have for you guys that will make it so much easier and less wasteful, and that is to only tape the relevant parts of the PDF. Now, I have watched lots of other YouTube videos. I've watched people assemble PDF patterns, and it's just amazing to me how many people I've seen who will like lay out all of the sheets in like the grid form, like it's an A0 sheet, and then tape the entire thing together into one giant sheet, and then they cut out their pattern pieces. I just think that that's incredibly wasteful, because a lot of that is just wasted space. It's not the actual pattern pieces. So I very, very highly encourage you not to do that. And instead, you're only going to put tape on the parts that you're going to be cutting out. And that's where highlighting your size is also really important. So I have an example here to show you. So as you can see, these 3 sheets here are not super stable because I've only placed tape on the portions that I'm going to be cutting out. So as you can see, I put some tape here. I did not put tape up here because there's no point. I'm going to cut that off. And I definitely didn't put any tape up here because there's no pattern up here. I'm going to cut this out separately, cut this out separately. So there's no reason to tape this part right here. You only need to tape where the actual pattern piece is. And similarly, I did the same thing down here where like this pocket piece, I just taped where the pocket is. And actually, and this part is loose over here because normally if I were doing the whole pattern, I would wait to tape this next section until I had these sheets. Also, just to show you, there is another sheet here that goes together like this. But as you can see from the highlighting, I don't need this part of the waistband because it's not my size. So there's no point in taping this part of the sheet to this part at all because there's nothing that you're going to be overlapping or needing to cut out. So just don't even bother to tape this sheet. You could just, you know, you would have, I don't have it on me, but you would tape like whatever piece is here, you'd tape that part, but this, all of this, you don't need to tape. So there's just no reason to do that. Now, that leads into my next tip, which is, like, as I said, it's not super stable because you aren't taping the whole thing together, so the pieces can get kind of floppy and wobbly. So my way of dealing with that is to cut out the pieces as you go. So once you finish an entire section, like the whole, like these are pants. So like once the whole front is put together, go ahead with your rotary cutter or your scissors or whatever you're using and just cut around that shape and kind of set it off to the side. You don't have to like carefully like cut on the lines in the beginning, but just like kind of roughly cut around that front pants pattern piece and then remove it from the sections that you're working with so that you can get that bulk out of the way. This is also really helpful when you don't have a giant table to put the entire rectangle on. Like my cutting table is not super huge, so I don't often have the room to assemble the entire sheet as one, but I just put the pattern pieces together, cut them out as I go. So like, just to show you here, so like these pieces, I would just go ahead and like rough cut around them and kind of set them off to the side. And I would do that as I go, just to get them out of the way so that they're not taking up space while I'm trying to tape the other pieces together. I hope that that makes sense. My last tip for you guys is to go ahead and keep the large pieces of paper that you have left over from when you're cutting out your big pieces. Keep those offcuts for a little bit in case you need them for making alterations. So like an easy example for this is if, let's say you need to lengthen something and you cut it on the lengthen shorten line and you spread it apart, and then you need to put some paper underneath so that you have the length that you need for however much you're spreading it. So just go ahead and keep your extra paper for that. Don't just like crumple it up in a ball and throw it away. Just like hang on to those larger sheets, those larger pieces, so that you can use them if you need to make pattern alterations. And then when you're all done, when you've actually like cut out your pieces and they're all ready to go and pin and cut your fabric, then you can get rid of the extra paper and throw it in the trash. So that is it. Those are my top tips and tools that I have for you for printing and assembling your own PDF patterns at home. I hope that this video was helpful for you. As I said, I know a lot of people don't like doing it, but I think that these things make it a little bit easier and a little bit faster and less painful to do at home. So if you liked this video and if you found it helpful, I hope that you will hit the like button and please consider subscribing to my channel. I'll see you tomorrow.